Welcome to the Subconscious Elements Podcast, a spiritual podcast where me and my co-host, Tori Setliff, go over all things spiritual, whether it's relationships, movies, books, stories, myths, the gene keys, science. Anything that has to do with growing and the spiritual journey and relationships we like to talk about. And today we're going to talk about the movie Soul. Man, it's a fantastic, beautiful Disney animation movie. And when we first saw it, we fell in love with it. We've seen it like 4 or 5 times now. And it's so funny that we heard like celebrities kind of trash this movie as it not being that good. But man, this is one of those truly underrated movies. And we think that people kind of slid under the radar in whole. And yeah, if you've seen this movie, you know what we're talking about. If you haven't seen it and you're into, concepts of the afterlife and the before life and second chances, you'll definitely like this movie. There's a cat in it too. Gotta love the cats. And I'll let my co-host Tori take it off with the summary.
Yeah, so unveiling the Disney Pixar's movie Soul. You'll discover passion, purpose, and lessons from the before and afterlife. So very interesting, meaningful topics. It starts off with the protagonist, Joe Gardner, and he is a music teacher at a middle school band, and he is extremely talented in the jazz and performing arts. However, he's unfulfilled with his journey and seems to have little luck with achieving his long-term goals as a musician. And through his life, so later in his journey, he receives a big opportunity, the opportunity of a lifetime, to perform with a jazz musician, Dorothea Williams. And right before the big day, or actually the day of, he ends up falling into a manhole and dies, or his soul separates from his body. And this is where the introduction of the Great Before begins in the screenplay. And the Great Before is basically a space, whimsical space, where new souls are there to learn their personalities, their quirks, character traits. And they're kind of preparing themselves and inspiring themselves for their lives on Earth. And so it just kind of shows that he's not ready to accept the great beyond and ends up finding his way into the Great Before. And that's kind of where the story sets off.
That's where he meets 22.
Yeah.
And 22 is a soul that has spent eons trying to find a spark to live, but she thinks that it's overrated and boring and doesn't want to do it. And so she's stuck in the Great Before and runs into Joe Gardner as a soul. And somehow there's a mix-up, so Joe ends up becoming her mentor. He takes someone else's name, becomes 22's mentor, and it's his job to help her find her spark. And she's in this path where she doesn't really want to listen to him. Right? She's just yeah, whatever, dude. You can have your spiel and we can do this little dance that I have to do. But essentially, I just want to go back to the way things were. And he sees this as an opportunity that if he could figure out how to get her Earth pass, that he could get one too. So he's only in it to help her for himself. And she decides that she'll go ahead and help him, because she wants to see what all the fuss is about. She's yeah, I'll help you because your life seems kind of miserable. And they go on the journey. They both end up finding a new appreciation for life. So you mentioned earlier, right, that he was unhappy with his life, and he realizes that on his journey with 22. And so she helps him fall back in love with life, and he helps her find a new passion for life. And it ends up being all happily ever after, but they end up clashing. And yeah, great movie.
Yeah, very bright colored screenplay. The music in the movie is excellent, and yeah, overall the animation was great. It's storytelling for many themes that we can take away and apply to our own lives.
Yeah, and you liked it a lot too, right? Because you were in the band, and it's about a band. So yeah, did you mention that Joe Gardner was a band
Yeah, band
musician,
director.
a band director, and in the very beginning, the movie opens up with them all playing the instruments, and I was like, "Hey, Tori, was that your band?" And she's like, "No, literally, it was." And then one of them like starts to go off with a trumpet,
It's a trombone,
a trombone.
and she's improvising. And
Yeah.
yeah, so there's one prospect in the band that's actually doing great and taking it serious. And yeah, I could definitely see that within myself.
I was like, "Is that you, Tori?" And you were like, "Yep, that was me."
Always trying to do more and test the boundaries, and yeah, so definitely I grew up doing band, and I played the clarinet, and from the inside it sounds amazing, and you think like you can hear all the running lines, like, oh yeah, here's the bass and here's where the percussion comes in. And then from the outside it sounds like pretty pathetic in a way where you're just like your parents go to this thing just to support you and it feels amazing, but then like from the outside perspective it sounds like
You guys are
cats and dogs fighting.
You guys are on the struggle bus.
Yeah. It's like
Yeah.
you prepared all year for this? Why is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's definitely very relatable. And I actually was going to pursue band teaching. That was going to be my original career because I was so inspired by the band. But yeah, so I can see a lot of reflections in Joe and myself.
Yeah. Pretty trippy, right?
Mm.
Yeah. And so, yeah, where do you want to start, Tori?
So yeah, in The Great Before, Joe and 22, they become mentors, and essentially we begin to realize very quickly that mentorship is a two-way street. So basically, as Joe's mentoring 22, 22 is also mentoring Joe. And we can see this in real life as well, where the teacher's also learning from the student. I thought that was a really big message to play out. And I've seen it with you specifically because you're a teacher. So you teach the students, but also equally they'll show you new things and new ways of learning.
Yeah, one of my favorite quotes for that is when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And when the teacher is ready, the student appears. And it's one of those things where it's like they're true for each other. And, you think that once you're a teacher, you're like this master and you know everything. But you realize that's actually the start of the journey. And because it's only then do you actually, are you able to tap into the deeper depth of like how much more you could know about each individual thing. And it's always trippy to think about. And for those of you who may be wondering, like, how could that actually matter to you? Well, one, if you can teach it, it will help you learn about whatever it is. So like one of the ways that you can get better in jiu-jitsu is start teaching the kids class. And a lot of times you can start doing that at blue belt, especially purple belt. And so it's like this eye-opening thing for you that when you try to put in words what you think that you know so well is like, you're like, oh, dang. And then you realize that you use complicated words. And that if it's complicated, then you really don't know it as well as you think you do. And when you have to like break something down Barney style for like an 8-year-old to get, you have to explore the concept further and mix and match words. And when you're able to do that, it deepens the depth of knowledge that you might have about any given subject. And especially too, when you're teaching a new young person something, they pick up on it so fast that they'll start learning all your best stuff. And then all of a sudden, all your go-tos are no longer working because you've already done it to them 100 times. So, yeah, I was definitely relating really hard to the whole mentor-mentee relationship that they had. And one of the things I really want to say is like, a lot of people imagine martial arts to be so hard because, you know, you got to do it all the time and it's tough and you're going to get beat up and it's that thing you got to do after work and after the family and, you know, before you eat, all these things. And, you know, I get questions a lot like, oh, how were you able to stick with it? But for me, in my mind, it was one of the easiest things to do because you have a coach. You have someone who literally is going to make you do everything. Like personal training, average $50 a session. Jiu-jitsu, 150 to 200 for the month. And then all you got to do is show up and they'll literally tell you what to do from start to finish. All you got to do is just show up and you're going to get like mind-bending knowledge from somebody. You can't do that with anything else. You know? Well, what is something else that you wanted to get better at that you could just pay someone $150 a month and just show up and one day be an absolute master at it? You know, like literally nothing, almost nothing is that available for anyone else. You know, like business coaches, crazy expensive. You know, personal training, expensive, adds up really fast. You know, being a man, being a better woman, being good at literally anything is expensive and almost hard to find, you know? So, if you can find something where you can get a coach or someone willing to teach you, that's like a huge advantage. And a lot of times these people are willing to teach you for free, you know? Because people appreciate having someone who's willing to learn and willing to pay attention and actually listen to what they have to say. So, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I've encountered a lot of coaches in my life, and one of the first, well, most impactful was the band director for me. And yeah, just showing up and them walking you through everything because it can be so intimidating at first. You're like, this is basically a foreign language music, and them helping you understand and giving you small tasks to help build you up. And from there, you flourish. And just like the encouragement, like you said, they can be there supporting you. And as long as you show up with enthusiasm and the means to do the best, then most likely they'd be more than happy to help and see you thrive. But yeah, band for me has been amazing, and music and all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, breaking down big tasks into something smaller where you can, it's more achievable and less daunting is another big thing.
So there's that moment with where one of the girls came to Joe Gardner's place, like while they're having a crisis. So like when Joe meets 22, they're trying to find Joe's body so that Joe can make it to the actual performance with Dorothea. And as they're trying to get him back, he botches it by trying to rush the process and he ends up inside of a cat and 22 ends up inside his body. And then they end up at his apartment and they're trying to figure it out of like how he's got to go get a haircut and he's got to change clothes. And in the middle of all that, one of the band students shows up and it's having like what would you call it? Like kind of just like in a mental block, kind of like, I guess having like an emotional reaction to what's going on in her life. And it's kind of feeling bummed out about band and is like threatening to quit. And then 22 gets an opportunity to like mentor the student. And just, she didn't even really do anything, right? Just kind of related to her. And then the student opened up and played a little piece of music. And then she felt a lot better and had like felt enthusiastic about music again. I was like, all right, thank you, bye. And then that like inspired 22.
Yeah, that whole scene was relatable because a lot of times when people are going through a struggle or something difficult in their life, most of the times they don't really need an external like lesson, like big feedback. They just need someone to speak to and someone to be there and listen to them. And that's exactly what 22 did. She just kind of listened to what was going on and was there for a supportive person, and she just kind of walked herself through her own problem and then figured it out for herself.
Mhm.
And then
Yeah,
was
22
remotivated.
22 knows nothing about music. Was just like talking to her and relating to her.
Mhm.
And then found inspiration by helping her. Once the little girl found inspiration, it like inspired 22.
Yeah, she's like, well, if she can be here on Earth and be living this experience and triumph through a hard time, then why can't I? It's kind of like that type of thing. Like, oh, maybe I can do it too.
And that's, I feel like, one of the hugest motivators for us as people is this idea that if that person can do it, so can I. And, obviously it's like that's the ego comparing itself, but we all need the ego, right? And then, I remember when I was doing the special forces training, it gets so desperate at times that you're literally like, you got to find somebody. You got to find somebody that you could beat up or be better than. And you're like, if that mofo is still here, I'm still here. Like, I'm like, I ain't giving up until at least that guy gives up first. Because you're like, it's war of attrition. They're trying to get as many people to quit as possible because
They
you're
want the
about to.
strongest.
Well, yeah, they're about to put you through 9 months of hell, and most people don't make it back. The 9 months is only the first like section of it. There's further on training, and people drop, and that's super expensive. If they start putting you through that training, and then you get hurt or you have a kid, the numbers are endless for why people drop. And anyway, so in this beginning training, this assessment and selection, they're just trying to get you to break. And yeah, one of the best ways to keep going was like find somebody that that they can't be as tough as you or that you're doing better than, and being like, hey, if this dude survived today, I will survive today. And one of the trippy things about it was that if someone like quit or couldn't continue, they just disappeared. They were just like, 1 minute they were there, the next minute they weren't. All their stuff was gone. No sheets, nothing. All over this empty mattress. And from the start of training to the end of training, it went from being like all the homies, just like a small group of us left, and just like, you don't really get to hang out with people because you're just busy doing stuff the whole time. But you develop relationships in the in betweens, so who's your boys, and you be like, we're still in this shit, dog. And the next day he's gone. You're like, my boy Blue, they got him. But yeah, just again just that idea, if they can do it, so can I, is a huge motivator for us all.
Yeah, for sure. When they were in the Great Before, one of the big scenes for me was when they were in the Hall of You. That's what they call it. And this is where they show the mentor's life through like a museum style with dim lighting, and specifically with Joe Gardner's Hall of You was like really dull and like, I think it was a blue color, right?
It was a lot of blue.
It's like black and blue, basically, like super dim lighting, like just showing his life and what he had achieved throughout his life. And it was just basically him watching television, him directing band, like him being alone and being very sad, and like,
It was a lot of failed audition.
yeah, a lot of failed things. And I think this rings true also to like what we believe about ourselves. Because I'm sure he did have a lot of things that were in better light, could be seen in a better light, that he just didn't recognize and always viewed himself and his life in that way. And so this is what was shown to 22, and she was like, wow, this is your life? And he was like, this is my life. And then it just like came to him and understanding like, haven't achieved anything. And this lesson can be learned through understanding that your passion is separate from your purpose in life. He becomes so consumed by achieving his one big dream that he fails to have the passion for his life. So he's only passionate about this one thing, and he's not really, he's just kind of moving life in accordance to that one thing. And anything that doesn't align with that one passion is seen as a failure. So,
Right.
so yeah, just being able to differentiate passion and purpose, and being able to understand, like, am I doing what I want to be doing with my life, or am I influenced by societal norms? Am I influenced by external people? Because one big external influence on him was his mother specifically. Like, she was telling him, oh, don't become a jazz musician because you're not going to be able to have the lifestyle and like comfort of knowing that you're going to have this stable paycheck. Like, you can't really afford to do that. We come from this certain lifestyle, this certain family. Like, we have to safer out,
You
basically.
want them to have the benefits and the guarantee.
Yeah. And so he's like torn between listening to her and then torn between doing what he knows is his life's purpose, or what he defines as his life's purpose.
Yeah, there's like this hilarious part where him and 22 get mad at each other because he is ready to switch bodies back, but she wants to spend more time in his body. And so she's like, no, let me do this for a little longer. And he's like, no, quit playing around. And they're like not really listening to each other. And then she starts to run away from him. And in doing that, one of the main characters, like the antagonist, I guess, if Joe's the protagonist, this would be the antagonist, is Terry. So he's one of the fifth dimensional beings who's like out to correct this oversight. And he catches up with them in that moment. And because he now like fixes this problem and Joe's no longer going to be in his body, they're like upset with each other. And as they start to split up, Joe asks one of the Jerrys about the life's purpose. And the Jerry just makes like this casual joke of just like, oh, you humans with your purposes and your sparks, your spark isn't your purpose. And it helps Joe realize that he thought music was his purpose, but it's not. It's one of the things that he appreciates about life, but he's been consumed by it. And yeah, I related to that hard with jiu-jitsu. It's like you get in your mind that you want to be this thing, or this idea of yours will make you happy, and you can lose yourself in chasing that dream to where you like look back and, it's like what he was saying, where it's like he didn't look back in his life and see all these beautiful moments with his family, his friends, the band, like none of that. All he saw was all the failed auditions and him sitting alone on his couch watching TV. And yeah, it's like, again, kind of that idea of finding the present moment, right? It's like we're always going to want more and to look to achieve things. But if you define achieving things as your purpose, you will lose track of the present moment and be able to appreciate all the day-to-day things that you have or will have. And that's because you're pretty much like focusing on the future, on some desired result. And so, and then there's like a hilarious moment where he actually makes it to the audition, does well, and it's like everyone loves it, and it was such a beautiful moment. And then he still feels like something's wrong. And he asked Dorothea, like, I thought this is what I always wanted, and I thought it would just be different. And she makes a joke about the fish, where she's like, I'm looking for where, two fish are talking to each other, and one goes, I'm looking for the ocean. Do you know where that is? He goes, you're in the ocean. And the other fish goes, no, this is water. I'm looking for the ocean. And she mentions that. And then she just like leaves him with that. And I asked you what that meant, and what your thing was on it. And you were just pretty much saying it's about the present moment instead of looking for something else.
Yeah, the experience that you're looking for can be found in the present moment rather than wishful thinking for the future. It's like the future will always be out of reach, so the only thing that you can control is the present moment. And finding things that you enjoy in the present moment, or things that you can appreciate, and just trying to do your best in every present moment to create the reality that you want, rather than looking towards the future as something unachievable or something that you'll never reach. but looking towards the future as a motivation and moving towards that with enthusiasm rather than some doom or gloom or something so far away. It's like the belief in yourself and understanding like I will one day reach that. And it's very important to have that big goal, because you do want to be motivated, but you can't allow the big goal to drain your energy in the present moment. Because if you're only focused on that, you can sacrifice so much in your day-to-day life. So
Yeah, and there's like this whole bit where people are somehow like, so there's like another realm that they're able to access, and it's like pictured as almost like a ocean, but it's like an ocean of consciousness, and like souls can get trapped there. So it's like, I guess, where you go for the flow state. So it's like the flow state area is being shown as like this huge vast ocean, and people are like popping in and out of it. And some people get lost there because they're so caught up with whatever it is they're doing, their passion, their purpose, that they like lose themselves in it. And they become like this ghoul, like they're clouded with, yeah. And they're like projected as like some type of Loch Ness monster, like a whale or something. And they gotta like reel them in with a harpoon and bring them back to their bodies. And there's like this hilarious moment where they find a hedge fund manager, and he's like, make a trade, make a trade, make a trade. And they bring him back to his body, and he's like this, hunched over the computer, like looking at graphs. And they bring his soul back, and he's like, we're alive. And he throws his computers and going all crazy. And yeah, I've definitely I've experienced that. It's like when you're just trying to get better at something, it's like day in, day out, you're grinding. You almost like don't even like doing it anymore because it becomes a job. Right. And then you can even take that to another level where you're no longer taking care of your personal life because you're just trying to get good at this one thing, and you're trying to, beat everybody else and out hustle everybody else. Like whether it's weightlifting, personal training, business, like jiu-jitsu, martial arts, like we all find ways of doing it. Meditating, we all like use these things to escape reality, and that can cause like long-term harm. So, but the bit is that there's people who are like intentionally going into this space and finding others in this space who are lost and helping them get back to their body. And it was like 4 like shaman.
Astral projection.
Yeah, they're astral projecting, but it's like 4 shamans essentially. And they have like funny names like Dream Weaver and, Water Weaver, like all these funny names. Moon Dancer, yeah. And they run into Joe Gardner and 22, and they end up helping them find their body. But they're each like, they're 4 different people that are doing like some type of flow state from different parts of the world. And they like link up together and go on these little missions. And it's so funny that we actually know someone who does that type of thing, where they in real life, they link up on Zoom and they go on astral projection missions. And this is in the movie.
And they meet up in the astral realms, and they actually do missions in the astral realms.
And it's like, we've seen this movie how many times, and then we meet this person recently, and the two were not connected.
Yeah. She'd never seen the movie, and she also, she told us the story before we had even mentioned the movie, and that brought us to mention the movie to her. We were like, you should definitely see this movie. We think you would enjoy it. And she's like, oh, okay, I'll watch it.
Yeah, she has cats too, so.
Yeah.
And so yeah, Joe and 22 end up switching bodies in that moment. So they help them to go find Joe's body, and he essentially has to like meditate from the flow state area, and he's like focusing in on his body. And right when he sees his body, he gets overexcited, or like he could become back alive again. And he jumps in there too soon and knocks 22, and then they tumble, and he ends up in a cat. And so it's like this weird thing where there's a human cat and a unborn soul is Joe Gardner. It's pretty funny, obviously weird, but
yeah, it's kind of like that Freaky Friday type of thing where you switch bodies type.
Right. But if you have a cat, it's funny.
Yeah, and then they're like, well, where did the cat soul go? And then you see they show it to the great after, and it's just a little cat like, meow.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh
Poor
man,
kitty.
just sacrifice the cat soul. But yeah, in the movie also, there's an old lady that's always looking for her cat, and she finds Joe in the cat body, and that's her cat, and she's like, Mr. Mittens, or whatever she
Mr.
calls him,
Mittens.
and she's trying to take him, and he's like, no, no, no.
Yeah, it's like this old lady, she's bringing like cats to the hospital. They're therapy cats and it's supposed to help the coma patients. And of course, Joe comes back to life when there's a therapy cat on him.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure at the end, after he gets out of the cat body, the cat returns to the cat returns to the grandma. So it's like a dark part of the movie.
Yeah. Well, so because they're switched in bodies, and she's still trying to help Joe get his stuff together, but she's also experiencing Earth for like the first time. So, and he's trying to communicate to her as a cat. And so it's like this huge, like funny little journey that they go on. But one of the things that happens is she's experiencing things for the first time, like being overwhelmed, anxiety. She experiences pizza and all these things. And then Joe gets to watch her go through these experiences. And then even he realizes like how much he takes for granted because he realizes that these experiences are awesome. And he sees it in the moment, but then he has a moment later in the movie where he reflects on it all and saw like, all these different moments that are pretty awesome if you just take the time to appreciate them. But it was like, one was the taking the bite of pizza after she was like totally overwhelmed by like the hustle and bustle of New York City. She's like collapsing like in the fetal position. She's like, no, I don't want to do this anymore. And then he goes and gets her a piece of pizza as a cat and then brings it to him. And she like eats it and she's like, And I think we all have had that feeling before. It's like pizza, it don't even make sense how good pizza is.
But she likes to try to play it off. She's like, in her mind, she's like losing her mind and bouncing off the walls. But then in real she's like, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
It's like, I can't let him know.
Yeah, she like noticed it with her senses too. Like before, she's like, what is that smell? Yeah, man, if you're hungry and you walk by a pizza spot, man, it does something to you. And then another one was the haircut place was like a huge moment where she has to get a haircut because the cat tries to line him up and messes up his hair. So then he's got to go get a haircut. And her going through the whole process of the haircut, like, just opens up a bunch of ideas for both her and Joe.
Yeah, because she actually has a one-on-one conversation with the barber about life and his life and is asking him questions. And every time that Joe had gone to the same barber, he had always just talked about himself and his jazz and where he was in his journey. And he's like, why haven't we talked about this before? And he's like, well, you never asked, Joe. I'm glad we finally talked about something other than jazz.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the barber even mentions that his original desire for work was not becoming a barber, but was rather becoming a vet.
Right. So she's like saying that, oh, you achieved your life goal cutting people's hair for a living? Like kind of like that. And he's like, no, I didn't want to be my barber my whole life. I want to be a veterinarian. But then I had a daughter and then this happened. I had to finish this. He's like, so now I cut people's hair. And he's like, it's not so bad. I make people look good for a living. And it was like a huge eye-opening thing for the both of them. And then there was like this guy that's in there. I can't remember his name. But he's essentially like talking shit on Joe the whole time. And there's this hilarious moment where like 22 doesn't understand the relationship and Joe explains the relationship to her, to 22, and she just like out loud kind of like breaks down the relationship.
He's like, oh.
He's just upset because of his own failed dreams. And like says that out loud. And this buddy, he's like, that's cold, Joe, and walks away. And then that's when Terry like looks at, he's like this fifth interdimensional being, and he's trying to fix this issue, right, of Joe being alive when he's not supposed to. And he like looks around the corner, sees Joe, but doesn't know that they stop and talk. And Terry walks out, and he snags up Terry, and pretty much gives him like an alien UFO experience of like taking his soul from his body. And he's like, "Wait, you're not Joe." Puts him back, And he's like, sorry about that. It's not your time yet. Unless you keep eating these processed foods. He's just sitting there with these bag of chips, freaked out. That cracks me up because I always wonder about aliens and ghosts and fifth dimensional beings. And that would be so trippy to see one, and it's like on accident.
Yeah, you said snags up Terry. He snags up the guy that was talking smack. Terry snags up the guy that was talking smack.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, that whole thing with like I could relate it to like psychedelics where like you accidentally maybe take too much and then you end up in a place where you're like, where the heck am I? You're like, how did I get here? And it can be like soul shaking because he was literally like shaking. Like, and coming back to reality can be very difficult. So he was like, came back to reality and he was still like shell shocked basically.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And so, yeah, they talk about the purpose, passion. They find out what it means to truly live. What does human existence mean? We talked about mentorship and growth. We talked about the present moment. Another huge theme in this movie was transformation and redemption. So Joe Gardner's like an older fella, probably like what, in his 40s?
Yeah, 40.
And he makes a comeback, and at the end of the movie, he's like excited and has like a newfound appreciation for life. And, you know, it's just like this whole, you could say, spiritual journey for him of like finding enthusiasm to live again and to be more present and to change his circumstances and not be so obsessed. And I think it's cool how it's like, because a lot of the Disney movies can be about young people sometimes. And that can be, you know, as we get older, that can be kind of harder to relate to. But Joe's dealing with like real life stuff, you know, like stuff me and you experience all the time, right? And so just seeing how he can turn the corner and then still have things to learn and work on and evolve and grow, that's like pretty cool.
Yeah, I think that's a very important thing to bring up as well, that no matter how old you are, where you're at in your journey, you can always improve in some way, somehow. And if you need an external guidance, mentor, something like that, I feel like they'll be available. You just have to know how to look for them. And yeah, regardless of age, you just have to redefine success for yourself and look towards something that is achievable. And potentially, by achieving these smaller goals, you can reach the bigger goals. But focusing on present moment, focusing on the journey, not just the destination.
Yeah. I think it's important that, you know, obviously we want to have like this crazy drive of never saying no and making whatever our mind comes to think of like a reality. You know, like this idea, like, no, I'm a champion. I'm not stopping until I become a champion. And, you know, obviously that's a super valuable thing to have. But again, one of the huge important things that you learn is, man, do you want to be a champion at the cost of all your friends and relationships and things like that? And if the answer to that is yes, like you don't care about friends, you don't care about a social life, like you don't care about the little things in life, like you want to be a champion, then go for it, because that's what it takes. It takes giving up everything to beat someone else. And if you're willing to do that, then go for it. But if that's not you and you're trying to find something more to life, whether that's, the inner journey, or it could be business, it could be relationships, family, you have to be able to chase these things, but don't forget to take a second to ask who are you and why are you doing this? Because a lot of times it'll be a combination of the things that you're doing that makes up your path, right? Like we have to be able to move and go with the opportunities in our life, because you can turn down a lot of things because you're trying to be a champion at something, and like I was just having a talk with a coach the other day. He's like, dude, I don't even want to take any more fights, dude. He's like, this is tough to take fights. I'm literally making more money than I've ever made in this gym. And he's like, and here I am taking fights. And I was like, dude, I feel you, bro. I feel it. So it's like, you can who's to say which one is better? Who's to say which is better? Yeah, we all want to be champions, but how selfish would it be to be a champion when you could be leading a whole team of people to be better? You know? And one pays you way more and the other one ain't paying you nothing. And the only thing it means is, like whatever your attachment you've put on it. But essentially no one really cares. But by building a gym, you could become a positive impact in a community, affect loads of people. So it's like, not necessarily, oh, you're giving up on yourself or your dreams. It could literally be because you were meant to do something much greater than that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, not trying to like
grip so tightly
to this idea, because the universe really will set you up way better than you can imagine. So don't be so attached to your own ideas or your own dreams, because it could literally be, if you just like opened up a little bit and allowed yourself to have more range, that you could become something that no one else is, right? Like being able to see different opportunities and pick up different skills instead of just putting all your eggs in one basket. And then again, whether it's 3 months, 6 months, every year, like readjusting yourself and figuring out, okay, am I on the right path? Am I making the right moves? Is this the right thing to do? Is there anything else that's coming in my way that, and combatives, after you hit the target, look to your left and right, scan the air, never get tunnel vision.
Yeah, I was talking to one of my coworkers last night. We had a little conversation about, I said, die by the blade. It's like,
the hell are you talking about?
we were quizzing each other with wine questions, and I was indecisive, and he was asking me a question, and I said, I know it starts with an M, but I'm torn between this and this. And he's like, choose one, 50-50. And I was like, oh, so I picked one and it was wrong. And he was like, oh, no, you can't change it now. I was like, oh, I think it's this one. He was like, and I was like, wait. He's like, nope, you chose that. And I was like, okay, I must die by the blade. He's like, you're wrong. I was like, yeah. So like being able to be adaptable, like you said, and like these things that we have passion for, we cannot exhaust them until they become something diluted. Like you must keep the passion and enthusiasm alive so that it can be something beautiful and can impact other people. Like the worst thing is meeting a coach that has like lost love for the sport and they're still teaching people, but they're teaching people in this like diluted, dark, narcissistic way where it's like whatever you're picking up from them, you're picking up things that you don't want to be. So it's like that can still be a reflection of like, hey, this guy's maybe gone too far. This is not what I want to be, so I can take what I can from that. But keeping passion alive and like broadening your horizons, broadening the things that you're learning, the things, the experiences, the hobbies, like find something. And like we said, you don't have to be defined by that for forever. You can always switch in. The humility and understanding like your capacity for this may not be the highest, but you can achieve something for yourself that can help others, or you can learn lessons from the path that you've chosen, and then that can help you in other paths along the way. So taking what you can and not trying to go too far.
Yeah. We talk about that with the jiu-jitsu, but it's also very true with the military. It's like some people stayed in for the money. Some people only re-upped because they had a wife and kid. And it was like always those are the people that complained about everything. They end up becoming complainers. And then like the leaders that just stick around because it's easy and they're getting a job, you like realize like, dude, they're literally doing nothing and they're preventing everyone below them to get promoted. And yeah, like you said, when you don't have the love for it and it's just a job, then you're literally missing the whole point of what it means to be a leader. And so, it's like one of the things I would teach Marines is the idea of love and hate, which is more powerful. And almost always like the group is split on which they think is more powerful. And hate appears to be more powerful because there's more of it. Like we experience a lot more hate than we do love. But I do like a little mental experiment and allow them to work out in their heads, like to what extreme would they take something, whether it's for love and hate, and love always wins out. Like if it, what you're willing to do because of what you love is way more than what you would do over something you hate. And one of the things that you realize is that like if you analyze your role models, if you have any, is like almost always whatever it is that they do, they love it. Like they take it to another level. And that's why they end up becoming role models. And it's like you can easily imagine how those role models, whether it's your dad, whether it's Kobe Bryant, whether it's what's the big one? I mean, pretty much any famous public speaker that's out there nowadays. The guy that was in Shallow Hal, you know who I'm talking about.
Tony Robbins.
Tony Robbins. Good callback, good pull. Any of these guys, if they didn't absolutely love what they did, they wouldn't be a role model because you would sense like you can't be that next level for somebody if you're dreading the things that you have to do. And I think that if you do something long enough that you go through a patch where you like that becomes you and you have to work through it. But yeah, that
genuine.
That genuineness, that authenticity, but that enthusiasm and love for what it is that you do. And, we've talked about it, how people have said people enjoy what I teach. And it's mostly just, it's like I'm not doing anything too crazy except just trying to care and trying to be my best, trying to be the best teacher that I can be.
Yeah. And like you said, a lot of people, they just go through the motions and they're like routine and they get like bored and they start the class, they go through the correct procedures and then that's it. But they're not really connecting, they're not really inspiring, they're not really like touching other people's and motivating them. It's just like, oh, this is a thing we do and do it this way. And it's like, well, why am I doing it? And so being able to relate to a person and truly inspire them to be a better version of themselves. And yeah, that comes with being authentic and playing the part. Like you have to be able to do the things that you're preaching and be the person that is capable of all these things. So
there we go. Anything else, Tori?
I would just say to like and subscribe. And we also have Instagram if you want to follow us at subconscious.elements. And yeah, we'll be doing more podcasts on movies. So if you have any specific movies that you'd like to see us cover, specifically, we prefer more like comedies, actions. So if you have any recommendations or something that we might not be aware of, feel free to leave a comment, let us know. And let us know how this story and message relates to you and your life.
We appreciate you guys. Thank you for tuning in.